A really interesting feature match here between some great players and two decks we haven't actually seen on camera so far. So on the right, if you've watched any amount of SEG coverage, GP coverage, and PT coverage too, you might recognize his mannerisms. This is Edgar Magalhaes, universally regarded as one of the best players in Canada, on a pretty innovative take on the Orzhov Pixie deck, which we've seen bobbing around a few of the other RCs. This is the first Nurturing Pixie or Hopeless Nightmare I think we've actually seen on camera this
Yeah.
weekend. And his testing group for this tournament, they really went into the tank and made some interesting changes there, which as we get into the list and sideboarding, we'll feature those. And then on the other side, Jeskai Oculus in the hands of Mason Wong, a deck that was one of the decks touted as a competitor to the Prowess decks and the Red decks. Has really fallen off a decent amount since those early RCs, but still a few devotees in the hunt here.
Yeah. And the Magalhaes family, they like pixies. Edgar's wife claimed the family was sort of the progenitor of Esper Pixie, the deck that kind of plagued standard for a while, and kind of coming back here and maybe doing it again with Orzhov Pixie. Obviously, we've seen a lot of players play stuff like this in the past in other RCs, but sometimes innovative takes can revitalize an archetype. Meanwhile, as the game's gone by, we were feeling it out there. We went Nightmare into Pixie Nightmare Classic, into a Profs over here for Mason Wong, into Unholy Annex. Gonna do the chamber side. Gonna take a card here for Edgar and pass the turn back to Mason Wong.
Yeah, but both players you see up there 9-3. So looking at the size of this tournament and comparing to previous RCs, Edgar coming off a top 8 earlier the year in Ottawa, it looks like X and 3 with good breakers is likely to get an invite, if perhaps on a top 8 spot. So these players maybe not playing for top 8 and high seed, but still a lot to play for. And Edgar in particular, he came here essentially to lock up the Atlanta invite. He's on the train to some extent already, but needs that little push to keep that going. And why rely on getting a certain record out of the PT where you could just do it, get out of the way right here?
Yeah, Mason Wong there played Tursa, discards 2 spells, draws 2 more prosthetic memory triggers, attacking for 5. Edgar down to 13 and facing down a big threat here. Edgar lining things up. Unstoppable Slasher, a 4 of in his main deck this weekend. A card we've seen float around in these decks every now and again, but never really stick.
Yeah, and never really in this Pixie deck. It's kind of supplanted for him the Preachers, which are the usual main deck beefy 3-drop in that slot. So some trade-offs here and there, right? It's not a strict upgrade. It's a side grade and maybe a little bit of an upgrade in 3 dimensions, but it's a really interesting choice.
Yeah. Lets you play a different type of game, right? Than something like Preacher would. So Nightmare got played. It looks like we discarded some spell, not exactly sure what it was here, but Momentum Breaker coming down. Max speeding up to 1 here for Edgar. Oh, Edgar's finding a max speed token. There we go. And then we're going to attack for 2, upping the speed.
So Edgar has a whole lot of stuff going on, right? So 2 Nightmares, Momentum Breaker, Pixie, Unholy Annex, and if you see the temporary lockdowns in Edgar's deck, it might seem a bit discordant with all of the rest of their stuff, right? Why are you wanting to sweep up all your own permanents? But if anything, you get to use it as a good defensive tool against stuff like the Izzet decks, while also turning it into the biggest blink effect of all with your Pixies and your Kirins. And with Kirin in particular, you can set up this loop pretty easily where you're bouncing the lockdown, replaying it, and then the next bounce effect is doing the same thing and then bouncing the first bounce effect. And so you're kind of doubling down on all of the triggers from your nightmares and so on. And if you're doing that at instant speed in their draw step, you can actually lock them out, just making them discard that new card every turn as well.
Yeah, it's a really fun, quote unquote, part of the deck. Obviously, fun is zero fun sum, and one player gets a lot of it there. This is a deck I actually played a lot of when the format first started, Dom. It, really speaks to kind of like the worst parts of me. And I never got the combo off, but I did a lot of winning. I eventually dropped the deck, thought it wasn't the best thing in the world, but I would love to get to see the combo actually happen. Edgar's taking a think here. Temporary lockdown in hand along with Get Lost. I think our land for turn is a shadowy back street, making things a little awkward here. One of the nice parts of this Jeskai deck, Dom, is just how, it never really floods out, right? Like, it's so hard for this deck to kind of just trip over itself, despite being a 3-color deck that has a lot of different things it's trying to put together. There's just a lot of, looting in the deck and just moving through cards.
Yeah, every deck in this format has its own inconsistencies and structural flaws and so on, but the deck that has a ton of looting effects can mitigate that more than most, I guess, is how I'd put it.
Yeah. Obviously, you can never perfect something. Get Lost here on the Steam Core Scholar. 2 maps for Mason. And Edgar's going to attack here for 2 with the Pixie. Get his max speed up to 3. And it looks like we're going to draw here at the end of turn. And draws nowhere to run. That was a good draw. You're missing out in hand here for Mason. 2 maps as well, 2 lands in hand. Start with a map on the Marauding Mako. Hits a land. Restless Anchorage.
That is a nice mana sink of sorts. Good thing to load up props counters on if the game gets to that point.
All right, there's the Steam Core Scholar. So Fear of Missing Out coming down. Has 3 lands, can discard one of those.
So Mako gets a counter from FOMO, and counters will try and go somewhere from props, but Edgar has the Tiny Noah to run. Just snipe that out of the way.
Yeah, a big draw 7. Had Edgar not drawn that here, Mason could have put Edgar in a really precarious position, life total wise. Fear of Missing Out can really also run away with games in combination with Prof. Edgar's life total is just healthy enough, though. Looks like Mason's deciding if he wants to maybe put counters on something different.
But yeah, tries to load them up on Mako, and yeah, Edgar has a removal. So all of these chip shots, right? The 2 nightmares and the Pixie into the nightmare, and then the at some point the Annex if a demon materializes too. Like this just adds up really quickly.
It really does. As Edgar, I believe, drew a Swamp for turn. So has Unstoppable Slasher and Temporary Lockdown to go with it. Could unlock the Ritual Chamber here. Looks like Edgar's taking a big think here on how he wants this game to be played out. The Fear of Missing Out plus Prosthetic Memory is a really punishing 1-2. If you haven't seen that before, the props will trigger multiple times because you get multiple combat steps. Not unrealistic for Mason here to maybe even, kill Edgar through a 6/6. Temporary Lockdown would do a good job stopping a lot of that. Max speed up to 4 here for Edgar. Could also see Edgar pop the Momentum Breaker instead of playing Unstoppable Slasher after Temple Lockdowning. Or excuse me, before Temple Lockdowning in order to gain some life. But he's going to put everything underneath here. Kind of has some burn spells and discard spells at the ready if he ever finds another Pixie type card. And then Slasher's his last card, going to trigger the Unholy Annex, draw a card here at the end of turn down to 7 and finds a Swamp.
So Terso, I think, with a draw for Mason, and I was that second profs in hand as well.
It's Steam Core Scholar.
Steam Core Scholar. Okay, yeah. So revealed from the Explore from the map last turn. So without the props, the Steam Core Scholar looks a little bit more anemic, and this deck does have a lot of moving parts. So as you said, even with all of this looting helping to set things up, you do get these disjointed draws sometimes where you have you know, the Oculus, but no way to discard it or reanimate it, or you have a lot of discard effects, but you're just kind of spinning your tires, not really getting anywhere. So, especially against a deck as disruptive as the Ozoff Pixie deck, easy for the House of Cards to just not really come together.
Yeah. Mason does look like he needs to discard 2 cards here. A little tough. Could end up playing, the discard 2 things, play a land for turn, play Fear, draw a card. That's one way to maybe start it up here, but in a tough position. You're also seeing how if the profs had stuck around, we would have very easily drawn a bunch of cards here. For Mason, profs would have triggered a bunch, and Fear of Missing Out would have been a huge threat. All right, discarding Tursa plus Edgar Waste. Gonna play our fast line for turn, then play Fear of Missing Out, draw a card. Draws Torch to the tower and passes the turn.
Yeah, the way Fear of Missing Out is worded, it's not you discard and then if you do draw a card, you just discard and then you draw. So if you have an empty hand, you can't discard a card, but you still draw a card anyway. So same, Seasoned Pyromancer trick from MH1 back in the day.
God, Fear of Missing Out is such a strong card. As Unstoppable Slasher goes in, threatening lethal, because if you pick up the temporary lockdown.
Yeah, we see FOMO popping up even in some decks that really can't use a lot of the synergy involved. So, like the Rados Demons decks in Pioneer, for example, right? A lot of them have FOMO, even though kind of hard for them to get Delirium, and there's not much graveyard stuff going on, no draw, discard, whatever. They just need a good 2-drop, and this is a pretty good 2-drop.
Definitely. Draining game here for Edgar. Knocks Mason down to 4. He's up to 9. Has all lands in hand. Wants Soulstone Sanctuary, though. So next turn we can play that and at least have a chump blocker. Worst case scenario. Mason, though, has a Torch the Tower and an Unknown in hand. Believe his Fear of Missing Out is online. Instant, enchantment, creature, and land. I know we're all in the graveyard.
And this Oculus deck, it has a Shelter by Ghost and a Into the Floodmoor in the main deck, but other than that, it can't really remove a big thing. So, if it sees a 6/6 demon on the other side, the only way is through, essentially, which sometimes in combat you can set that up, but if the main role of the demon is just converting the Unholy Annex into this win condition, then there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah. Mason, also an interesting spot, kind of wants to redraw, but maybe wants a specific card out of the graveyard for Tursa's trigger. So discarding this card might make that less likely. Maybe also wants to use the Torch on the Slasher. Tursa draws a new one. Definitely 7 or more cards in graveyard, so we're going to get a random spell, or random card, excuse me, from that. Tursa's a really cool design.
I've had a lot of fun playing that card.
Yeah, Fear of Missing Out can untap the Tursa as well, so you get another look at things.
That said, when my opponent at the RC attacked with Tursa and had a graveyard of 16, 20 cards, enough that we couldn't cleanly use a D20. We just had to pick one at random.
Yeah.
I needed them to not hit Oculus, and well, you know how the story ends, because why else would I be telling it?
And he did it because I'm the GOAT. Yeah, you see here, I mean, the graveyard's huge, so these players are just gonna, shuffle it up, do a little cut, and then flip a card. It's a braid. Kind of a frustrating one. Yeah, not good enough to win. So Mason is going to pack things up here, and Edgar's going to move on to be up a game in this match. So let's check out the sideboards and see what these players have, as I'm sure Edgar came prepared for decks like Oculus, maybe, skimped a little bit on hate, maybe thought the deck wasn't the best in the world, but either way here, checking out the Orzhov bounce deck, got a couple pretty cool ones here in the sideboard. Blottout's a card that could be kind of nice. Kotal Flanker. I don't know. Alondra Saint of Dusk, maybe a pretty good card in general, kind of a nice one. What are you thinking about here, Dom?
the Elenda, I think, more for the Izard decks, right, where it can't bounce it as easily, and a lot of the bigger damage spells that could kill it can't even target it. So a kind of nice roadblock there. Less so against Oculus, I think, because they can outsize it pretty easily, and they don't have a ton of instants, and they have some flyers. Like it doesn't really line up that well. But yeah, Ghost Vacuum is nice. Blood Out, you could look at. It's a little expensive, but if you feel like you need it, Destroy Evil, one of the best cards against Oculus and many other decks. So you can kind of get some nice cyber cards against Oculus for this deck without even trying too hard. But yeah, maybe there is a world where if Oculus and Domain and other decks are more popular, you might see 2 to 3 Destroy Evils or something instead of just the one.
Makes sense. Let's see what we have over here in Just Got Oculus Land.
And yeah, here Mason's Destroy Evils will be great for him. The Loran, of course, will be nice. Get Lost, good way to answer really any of the problematic enchantments or like big stuff like the. Well, I was going to say like Preacher, but of course Edgar is focusing on Slasher over Preacher, in part, I think, because a lot of the stuff that can tag Preacher just doesn't actually line up well against Slasher permanently. Maybe it's still worth it anyway, of course. And then you can look at some of the bigger grindy cards like the Ral, the Winter Night Stories. Could debate the counter spells like Negate or No More Lies, maybe.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And you're right. This, one of the things where open decklist is really helpful. You see the unstoppable slasher, but you might be a little bit more inclined towards destroy evil, thinking that might just be preachers. Maybe it's a one of or whatever, right? But when it's like, okay, yeah, typically I do this, but this time might change up my plans a little bit here. Either way, these players are on a great run so far this weekend. X and 3. Second to last round here, penultimate, you could say, in the Swiss. We think they're live for a Pro Tour invite with good breakers, etc. We're not 100% sure of anything.
Yeah, I think a lot will become clear when we have the standings here after round 13, going into round 14, and then the people more mathematically skilled than I can do that math. At the last RC, where Edgar was in the top 8, I thought I could draw into the invite and repeatedly tried to draw with my opponent, who refused, and I wanted to play for top 8. And I'm glad they did, because it turns out I think I would have drawn and was able to win it instead. But despite my own best efforts there.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Well, it all works out in the end, right? That's really funny. Take a look here at the top 12 so far right now.
So yeah, MTG Quebec himself, Sebastian Lachance, who we saw on camera yesterday, and who you've seen in various places if you play Magic in Quebec, keeping the community connected and informed. Top of the standings at X1. I believe, don't want to put words in his mouth. I think his first finish of this nature, at an RC or so on, and then Mohammed Charlie in second. Also previous RC top 8 and back in the saddle. It looks like here. You're kind of sneaking under the radar quietly. And then Ray Zhang, CFT Sock, not only at X and 2, but reasonably high among the X and 2. So maybe a winning in this round. If they win, maybe there's a chance they can draw Noe Hoffman, also top 8 of that first RC back in Toronto. Aiden Mirabelli, also back to back. So if you know your Canadian Magic, a lot of these names will look very, very familiar. So the cream is rising to the top here. And then, looking down a little further, Kevin Axel, Daniel Fournier, who was 8-0, tough run since then, but still maybe live because his breakers will be phenomenal if he wins the last two. Boston Chatterman, same deal. Liam Kane, excellent one for a while in the hunt, has fallen away a bit. And then some other good names as well. So I know there's a narrative with some of the early RCs of, a lot of players you didn't recognize doing well, and a lot of the killers just having a rough time of it. So there was some talk of, well, what really matters in this standard format, right? Can you leverage your skill in a traditional way? And at some tournaments, it seemed like the answer was no. This one, it seems like the answer was yes. A lot of big names in the hunt.
Yeah, and we love to see that because it always leads to some great feature matches for us. Magic's a pretty sick game, Dom. I'm willing to go on a limb, be brave and bold in this regard.
I'm a fan, and I mean, any Magic player can have a long list of things about it they will complain about, but if you look at their revealed preferences in terms of how they choose to spend their time, then their actual stance becomes pretty clear a lot of the time.
I think so too. All right, both players mulliganing up here. Looks like they've kept Marauding Mako turn 1 here. Often inspiring Vantage into Plains Ghost Vacuum for Edgar. Helping Hand, the draw for Mason.
Right on time.
Yeah.
More of a hurting hand here, perhaps.
Yeah. Comedy is timing is the key to comedy. I'm dyslexic, don't blame me. And as we pass the turn with intact for 1. Edgar?
It's kind of scary in game 1 with the Pixie deck sometimes in this matchup of, well, I want to cast my Hopeless Nightmare, but am I the discard outlet for? And am I giving them the helping hand to have like the Oculus nut draw? And I think often it makes sense to just stop being cowardly and grow up and just cast your Hopeless Nightmare. But post board, when you have the Graveyard Hate, a lot easier to justify.
Speaking of justify, Mason Wong has this No More Lies in hand that he kind of wants to hold up, but also has this Team Course Caller he wants to play. Justifies tapping out for this. Makes a lot of sense. Draws 2. Another Helping Hand. I imagine one of those probably hits the bin. Is there a world, Dom, where you discard both Helping Hands just to like grow the shark? Or is that like crazy talk?
I think you're meant to do that, and as you have a maybe additional looting effects, you just want the material in hand, or if you think you have like a Loran or something to unlock your graveyard. But yeah, if you don't, it's a real consideration.
Speaking of consider, Edgar's considering, do I want to know where to run this? Go for the throat. Goes for the nowhere to run here. And then Ghost Vacuums it immediately.
It doesn't even make it to the graveyard. It just goes straight over into the Hoover.
Here's a Preacher of the Skids. I'm going to passing of the turn.
Yeah, you mentioned Mason having this choice of, do I commit to the Scholar? Do I hold up my counters? Oculus is not really a good deck for counter magic because you have a lot of expensive sorceries for the most part. Not a lot of ways to use your mana at instant speed. Sometimes you have colored mana requirements too, or tap lands. So it's kind of hard to make progress and also hold up your normalize at a key moment.
I agree. Yeah, I even in like No More Lies versus I think Omniscience, for example, it's like kind of dubious at times, right? So
do you want to reassure chat that I did in fact go to Tim's this morning? I'm fueled as I often am by their delicious large iced coffees. Future going to come in. We'll see if we have vampire tokens on deck here. Oh, Gab Nassif has entered the fray.
Podcast co-host of Edgar, the midweek
Yes,
metagame. More like mid-month metagame. Yeah, come on. I need content at the gym.
Well, you see, do what I do and go to the gym, maybe once a month if you're lucky, and you'll have all the
yeah. Something tells me that might get me other results though that I'm not looking for. A little give, a little take. Momentum Breaker. That's Dom's gym progress getting cast here.
Woohoo, okay. I have nowhere to run. It's really a hopeless nightmare if you think about it.
Yeah. I went for the throat, Dom. What can I say? Mason has a fear of missing out on this bit. Okay, he didn't really have it. It was No More Lies for him and for the play this turn. Gonna fight over the Momentum Breaker. Is a painful one, though. Double Pain Land. Jeskai Oculus. Not the world's best mana you've ever seen. And a passing of the turn here for Edgar.
And just in time, Yellow Hat himself has entered the chat. in a literal sense and not just a metaphorical one.
A signed Yellow Hat token too.
And as anyone who has watched the stream can testify, Gabe has not aged a day since that photo was taken.
Mm-hmm.
And Gabe's co-winner from PT Atlanta 20 years ago, D-Rude, still in the hunt in this tournament. So that generation still got it, it looks like.
They really do. Magic players built different. Us new age players, we gotta push them back a bit more, you know? We're old though now. What am I saying? It's been 10 years almost. Ghost Vacuum gets Steam Core Scholar. Do you think there's some implication from Edgar about Gabe being a vampire per the aging thing by using him as a vampire token? That's like a cry for help.
I think you're really onto something, but he does have lifelink, so he's got that going for him.
That's true. Destroy Evil going to take down Preacher of the Schism if Edgar doesn't have a way to save it. I think he might. He is thinking about it. It's at least posturing it as a Kieran. Tack in for 1. 3 mana for Edgar here. Has a Cotswold Flanker in hand. Has a Lauren. That's going to blow up Fear of Missing Out if it resolves. It does resolve.
Yeah, Lauren, a card whose stock really rose dramatically with all the enchantment creatures in Dustmourn, and then more to come in Final Fantasy as well. Lots of the sagas, which really cool way to design those. I think that's a home run, but also means that any Destroy Evils and Lorans in the chat are looking at.
Salivating. Haywire Might. Can't quite get him, but Lauren always does. All right, Tursa. We have a lot of cards in the graveyard. We're not going to discard any more. I was going to say, I don't think we could outdo the Ghost Vacuum here.
Yeah, Tursa just keeping both. So a sign of strength in that sense. Looks like, yeah, Spell Pierce, Profs, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it's Spell Pierce Prof I.
Okay. Yeah, the eye is interesting because against a vacuum, you're not going to cast it anytime soon. Definitely not going to reanimate it, but you also don't want to discard it because Edgar's getting close to 6 lands, and you don't want that, you know, going turncoat against you via the vacuum.
Going turncoat, I like that. That's my saying now. I'm taking that one. Okay, it was Fear of Missing Out in hand. Okay, it's Eyeball Prof. Get Lost, Fear of Missing Out. No Spell Pierces for Mason.
Okay.
Our mistake. I've recently picked up the turn, take a crack at it. You know, just give it a shot, see how it goes.
Yeah, you played that game in your head. You like the way it played out.
Yeah, I think it was good. I recently heard someone talk about Dom told me this card was good in Amulet, but he also said he only played games in his head and he only won some of them. Or something to that nature. And I was like, God, I love Dom. I would say the same thing to somebody. It's like, yeah, I haven't played too much. Thought a couple lines through. I didn't win all of them, but it seemed kind of nice.
More and more people are saying this, it sounds like. So here is props for the other Mason, the imposter before us.
Mason Wong. He's the Mason of Canada. As props gonna draw Mountain. It's really interesting how much pressure Edgar is actually applying. I mean, we're not, breaking down any doors or whatever, but he has been sort of, constantly chipping away at Mason along with these pain lands, making his life a little awkward.
Yeah, the Soulstone Sanctuary, ready to fire up at a moment's notice too. So he's kind of got a lot of stuff going on because the vacuum is really limiting what Mason can do. Shutting off reanimation, delirium for FOMO, so on and so forth. Also, it's just a self-contained endgame threat, right? Like the moment Edgar finds a 6th land, he can just put 4 different things or 3 or 4 different things into play. And in the meantime, I don't know, he's taking a bunch of game actions, attacking for points here and there. going wide as well. He's just kind of chilling, kind of crouching on all axes.
Yeah, has console flanker in hand. Yeah, you're seeing him kind of think about maybe I should be bringing this stuff back soon. All right, we're both drawing a card. Edgar wants some action. Gets a Cave of the Koilos. Draws Soulstone Sanctuary. I would love to play a control deck Dom where my only win condition is Ghost Vacuuming their cards.
That's kind of nice.
That's the kind of stuff you can expect if you run into me on Arena. I'm not
Okay,
Izzet countering you. I'm Ghost Vacuuming you for 35 minutes to lose.
what if you get paired against another Sigo who has the same idea? What happens?
Sounds like heaven.
Well, I hope we can rig the matchmaking algorithm so you can all have your fun with each other and the can play Magic as Garfield intended.
I would love to be in the Ghost Vacuum queue. As we're gonna play Soulstone Sanctuary and pass the turn. Attacking for 2 with the Pixie. Mason draws another Pornoculus.
Living up to its name in this game state.
It really is. Mason dangerously close to having enough cards in graveyard to cast it. I mean, there's 4. Obviously, Ghost Vacuum makes it essentially be 3. And they're going to have a hard time catching Edgar slipping up. He's going to be thinking about that. Someone who helped popularize the Pornoculus in the modern format, in the Blue-Black Frog.
Yeah, but baited a whole new generation of players into, Red String Water Grave in Modern.
Yeah. You all played a big part of me getting baited in Amulet Tide, and that one worked out in the long term, but nowadays it's frog stuff. As we are going to Ghost Vacuum away this land.
And yeah, Sanctuary ready to start rumbling.
Draws another land here for Edgar. No Lauren activation this turn. Last turn we did, this turn we didn't. Soulstone activate number 2. And yeah, I think we're swinging in with everybody.
Yeah.
This
And it's so low cost, right? Like if it goes wrong, okay, you lose one thing maybe, and you still have a bunch of other attackers, and half of them have vigilance, so you have blockers up for the worst case scenario. So yeah, put Mason to the test, and if he fails, he dies, and if he passes, he probably still dies.
Yeah. All right, Get Lost looks to be targeting something. Soulstone is obviously the biggest creature, but there are other targets. All right, looks like it's going after the Soulstone Sanctuary. That's going to give Edgar a couple maps. He has some mana laying around too. And it looks like Edgar before damage is going to do something. He's going to play Katsul Flanker, so he floated mana off the one that got Get Losted as well. And he's going to exile Mason's Graveyard, really turning off any chance for the Abhorrent Oculuses to get snuck into play. And yeah, Mason takes 3 there. Excuse me, 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one issue with this Oculus deck is if you fall behind like this, it's kind of difficult to catch back up unless, a timely Oculus or something can do that for you. You kind of need to be on the front foot and then keep pressing your advantage. And Mason never had an advantage to press. Edgar just kind of slice and dice him out there. So Edgar, after I think a pretty rough start to the tournament, is now 10-3, going into the last round and potentially playing for. I think maybe not live for top 8, but definitely playing for the invite for top 12.